Why? How did it survive?
Oh, it's all right. It's all right. Yeah.
All right, okay.
We started this to be able to talk about the biggest fights, the most earth-shattering events, and the spectacle of MMA just in and of itself in all its glory. We started doing this just so we can talk about the big moments, just moments in time in MMA history that make us go, oh my God, that happened. And UFC 244 is promising to be the best card, my friend, of the year. And I mean, according to how it goes and how it plays out and what the quality of the fights is, could be one of the best cards ever assembled, because from top to bottom, it has fighters who are unique in their presentation because they aren't just a good fighter, or they aren't just good fighters. They aren't just an assembly of really good MMA fighters. It is ultimately people who come to fight. And that is what the theme of this card is. And this is going to be one spectacle of a card. This is the 4th episode of The Way In, brought to you by On The Mic. With me, as always, Badr Ali, my friend. What a card this Saturday.
UFC 244. And, you were mentioning how these fighters are at their peak, how these fighters are at a completely, it's a distinctive point in MMA history. And I think one of those ideas that really, promotes this is that you now have the BMF title. It's something unique. It's something that no other organization has thought of. It's something that was a fictitious concept up until Dana said that, hey, I'm going to make a belt out of it. And now it's the first time this kind of event is happening. It's in the biggest stadium in America. I mean, not in terms of numbers, but I think in terms of value.
The most important, stadium, I think, in all of the U.S. and maybe in the world. The most popular for sure, Madison Square Garden. Now, the relevance of this card, at least in terms of the things that are being promoted and how they're being promoted by the UFC. First of all, never in the history of the UFC, like you said, has there been now technically 2 belts in one weight division. That's something to think about. Yeah. Ultimately, this isn't a weight division belt. It doesn't necessarily prove that this guy's the champion of a certain weight division. We know it means something altogether. But now if you think about it, there really are 2 different champions round about the same weight, which then brings the question in, is this their way of introducing the 165-pound division?
Or is this their way of adding more concrete titles to maybe deciding pound for pound?
Yeah. I mean, see, this is, but see, the existence of this belt is more predicated on something a little more holistic in terms of fight style.
Yeah.
So for those of you watching who aren't as well acquainted with mixed martial arts, there's different disciplines to the sport. You can be a wrestler, you can be a grappler, you can be a striker, you can be a so on and so forth. But this belt essentially encapsulates somebody who isn't necessarily a striker or a Muay Thai guy, but somebody who brings a certain energy, a certain fight style, and a certain intention to the cage every time they step in, which is to go in there, kill or be killed. This fight isn't going to be won, it's going to be fought, basically.
I feel like this is like the formalized conclusion about what Eddie Alvarez was trying to do.
Yeah.
So with the most violent man on the planet
That's a
title.
good point,
Yeah. So I think that was the kind of gimmick that they went with because they knew that was selling. And now there are people that too claim to be the most violent man on the planet. Now they're going to be people that claim to be the baddest mother effer on the planet.
Yeah.
And that's all because of this one fight, this pivotal fight that's going to take place on Saturday.
And you know what? Themes and marketing, ladies and gentlemen, tell you everything that you need to know about a card and how it's being promoted. What we need to keep in mind is that this started all not by some UFC PR machine churning out ideas in a creative process meeting. No. This started when Nate Diaz uttered the words, I want to defend this belt that I have just won. Yeah. When we heard this, we thought Nate's
crazy.
Too punch drunk to even be able to comprehend anything. But it was an idea that he came up with. He said he wants to defend the belt of being the baddest motherfucker against another guy who he thinks is really real in Jorge Masvidal. 2 guys who essentially come from an aura and a vibe, give out that kind of aura and vibe that they're street boys, that they're not necessarily the corporate world entities created by the UFC or any other marketing organization. It's simply them coming from the streets to fight, and that's all they know. If you look at the poster of the UFC 244 card, it's Masvidal versus Diaz in straight out of Compton font. They're trying to sell that market essentially, and I think it's a very appropriate, very realistic. It's not a stretch by any means of anyone's imagination. These guys really are all that and some, and I think it's going to be super exciting to see these two absolute gangsters go at it.
Okay, so let's get down to business. Where do you see this fight going?
All right, so ultimately, I think between Jorge and Nate, both guys, there's some interesting statistics, right? 78 fights combined for both these guys, right? Only 38 finishes, though. I mean, wins or losses. 38 times their combined fights have finished. That's way less than I think half, which my maths, again, is not the best. But ultimately, is 38 less than the half of 74? What's the half of 74, Homer?
It's 37.
37?
Yeah.
Oh, boom. Just one over the half. So more than half
Quick
of their
math.
fights, or just half of their fights, let's say, have finished. Every other fight has gone the distance. So I think fight's going to also have a pattern. These guys aren't necessarily finishers or explosive power punchers. Maybe Jorge more than Nate, in my opinion. But ultimately, these guys are fighters who are willing to go the distance. So I think Nate Diaz is far superior grappling skills, his ability to wrestle his opponents when needed, or if not wrestle, at least put him in those clinched positions that are uncomfortable against the cage. He puts him against the cage, he beats him up for a bit, makes him tired. Nate Diaz can go for days. This is a 5-round fight. This is his element. I think his superior grappling and his ability to not get hurt so easily, because the only thing Jorge, in my opinion, can rely on in this fight to beat Nate is a power punch or a big shot that can get Nate Diaz hurt. That doesn't happen in my books, especially after 3 years off, no brain damage. I think Nate Diaz takes this one easy. I think he doesn't finish him, but he takes him the distance. He scares him with a few submissions here and there. Other than that, I think, Nate Diaz pretty much takes his fight. What do you think?
Okay, so for me, skill set wise, I feel like skill sets are only relevant in terms of where the fight goes. So I don't see this fight going to the ground whatsoever, because I feel like both guys kind of want to stay true to themselves and want to stay on the feet. Like, obviously Masvidal has nothing to make him go to the feet. He has no reason to. But Nate does. Yeah, sorry, to the ground. And Nate does, because Nate has that jiu-jitsu that he always has his back foot on and he can always rely on. But if the fight does stay standing, because I feel like Nate is going to do what you said, which is hold him up against the cage, drain his energy, land some strikes from the pocket, keep him clinched up. But I feel like in that situation, when they're in and out of the pocket, that's when Masvidal is going to strike him. I feel like Masvidal has that knockout power. If you compare with Nate, Nate does not have the same level of striking power that Masvidal has. And I feel like Masvidal is going to find the opening and take his chance. And I think that Masvidal, my pick at least, is Masvidal by a second round TKO.
Right. So I disagree with you here, simply on the, and of course agree to disagree. We're going to be watching the fights together. I'm really hoping Nate wins so I can rub it in your face. But ultimately, I think even though you're right, this fight will remain standing to a very large degree because both guys would want that to happen. But if you look at any of Nate Diaz's fights, let's look at the Anthony Pettis fight as an example, right? The Anthony Pettis fight, you expected what? Fireworks, all of that, and it delivered. The fight was really good, but it was ultimately a dominant performance by Nate because he was able to pick when he wants to box with the guy and when he wants to simply hold him up against the cage and work. Nate Diaz is an output fighter. He's not a KO fighter. You're right about that. But ultimately, I think when it comes to the output binary between Jorge Masvidal and Nate Diaz and who can do better, I think in that situation, the binary close inside the cage, which is their fight skills, goes in favor of Nate because I think he's always going to be able to outwork him ultimately and also be able to be threatening enough to finish him if the fight ever ends up on the ground. I think there is a large likelihood with the amount of trips Nate Diaz uses, with the amount of, the complete skill set that he brings to the octagon, I think ultimately gives him the win. So my prediction for this fight, Nate Diaz.
All right, then. Maybe we'll find out finally, because honestly, in my opinion, I don't think this fight is going to go to the ground. And even if it does, Masvidal can hold his own on the ground as well. I don't think that Nate necessarily is going to be able to completely neutralize Masvidal, because what you, I think, kind of are overlooking is that Nate Diaz can strike for days, but at the same time, Masvidal can counter strike for days.
Yeah, no, I'm not counting him out one bit. I still think the fight can definitely go either way. Masvidal's proved me wrong twice. I didn't think he was going to be able to knockout Darren Till. I didn't think it would go longer than decision. I gave the knockout advantage to Darren Till. Proved me wrong. Then I thought Ben Askren was going to be able to come out with a good enough game plan, good enough wrestling and grappling edge like I'm giving Nate. And then he surprised me with a freaking flying knee. Yeah, that flying knee, which is the fastest UFC knockout. Not title fight, not anything that would limit the statistic. Just the pure statistic in and of itself. What is it? 5 seconds? 4 seconds? 5, right?
Yeah,
we should know this.
5 seconds.
5 seconds. Or is it 4? Who knows? 5 seconds. Definitely 5 seconds. Yeah, I just remembered. 5-second knockout. I don't think it's going to be beat. It was really 2 seconds. Like, it was literally from the point where he left the side of the cage to meet him at the center, and boom, that fight was over.
They didn't even meet at the center, man. It was just, Masvidal just took like 2 steps forward, and then all of a sudden just...
Yeah, it was all over. It was insane. But yeah, this is what this fight is. And this fight alone is bringing in so much press, so much coverage, so much attention to the sport. Ladies and gentlemen, in case you haven't heard, you are hearing this from me now. In case you live under a rock, you haven't heard. But if you haven't, here it is. Donald Trump is going to be at the event. UFC 244, the VIP is Donald J. Trump, the president of the most interesting country in the world. And also, on top of that, Dwayne...
Yeah, and this is where it gets... This is where it gets hilarious, because you would expect Donald you would expect Donald Trump to be the one wrapping the belt around either winner's waist, but it isn't, because The Rock just stood up and...
Yo, okay, don't say that to me as if that's a good thing, man. I'm sick of Dwayne The Rock Johnson. I've had enough of this man. He was my hero when I was growing up as a kid. All right, I loved this guy. He used to wear his t-shirt, had the action figure. He used to always win, beat all the other action figures. All of that, it's true. Dwayne Johnson is a very important part. The Rock is a very important part of my life. But this animal that wrestling fans like I have created, this guy is running circles around Hollywood like it's nothing. He's in every movie, every Instagram post is about him breaking some kind of a record. Some record in some country, some box office. I've had enough. But you know what? You know what? The good thing is the fact that he's doing all of that and making things and making my life harder as a person who enjoys movies. And
you look at Umar Fassi like he's The Rock. You're so angry at him.
It's you, Umar Fassi. It's you. No, but listen, it's good because they got The Rock to come, not only get interested in this event, right? They got him to grow up, right? He got him to come to the event, and he's wrapping the belt around the winner. Yes, like that is very good because now a lot of casuals are going to come in, and this is really shaping up to be one of the biggest and most important MMA cards ever. But one last time, man, fuck Dwayne Johnson. I've had enough of that guy.
I agree with you.
Bleep
but
that out for me. Yeah, okay, thanks.
The only thing I don't agree with is that maybe you don't hate him. Maybe you're kind of jealous of him.
Maybe I'm in love with him. Maybe I just want Dwayne Johnson out of myself.
Dwayne Johnson.
But yeah, that's Dwayne Johnson coming to you at UFC 244.
But you know who's better? The fact that it's better that Kelvin Gastelum and Darren Till are coming. I don't care.
Who's better? Kelvin Gastelum. That's who. Yeah, honestly,
I couldn't care less about The Rock, man. Like he's just a wrestler that went to Hollywood and now he's really big and he's breaking records and
big like physically too.
And big in terms of social media prowess.
But who else is a big boy? My boy KG, Kelvin Gastelum. Man, I love this guy. And I really think that this fight is going to be the one that steals the show, because I think everybody's forgetting that Jorge Nate is still a fight and it is for a belt and it is for a first time something. This fight, Kelvin Gastelum, Darren Till, it's two guys who have a lot to lose but nothing to lose all at the same time. They're coming off very interesting career trajectories from wherever they were beforehand, and this is the fight. This is the fight that I think is going to steal the show. Tell me about this fight.
So in my mind, there are a lot of different angles to this. So one of them is that these are two people that are distinctly working together. Working together? What do you
Working together, yeah.
Stop distracting me.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, but these are two fighters that are both coming off losses. I mean, Darren Till is probably in a worse ditch than Gastelum, as Gastelum only lost to Israel. Yeah. But both of these fighters have something to prove for the middleweight division. on top of that, Gastelum did the exact same transition that Darren Till is now going through, which is from welterweight to middleweight. And then on top of that, they both have I'd say kind of similar fight style in terms of them being really able to find the distance, understand it, maybe get into the pocket and land that one big strike, or even consistently keep hammering away.
So where do you think this fight's going to go?
Well, I'm not too particularly sure, but I don't think either person is going to get the better of the other person. I think
Are you predicting a draw?
So there's going to be no finishes. I think that this fight goes to a decision, and I think Gastelum wins it.
All right, that's fair enough. I'm not sure whether this fight's going to go on decision or knockout, so I'm not going to make that call. It's a bit too ambitious. But here's the thing. This fight is a story, right? Every fight is a story, but more than that, some fights carry the character of the human being in them, the human being that we all are, right? And one of the stories and aspects of the human being that is mankind is comebacks and being able to deal with adversity and move forward with your head held high. And I think one of these fighters has proven to be somebody who is so durable in terms of their career longevity, but also in terms of their ability to adapt to different circumstances. Kelvin Gastelum moved up from welterweight to middleweight, beat Tim Kennedy, beat some other impressive middleweights, and then at a point said, I don't know if I can knock out guys like Luke Rockhold. I might as well just go down to welterweight. He said that. He wasn't sure if he could do it. Now this guy's been on top of the heap at middleweight for so long because he's been able to come back from defeat after defeat. Not long ago, he was knocked out, or he was finished by Chris Weidman, and now he just came off a crazy, crazy fight for the interim title. And I think he definitely is in the right head state, or state of mind in his head, whatever you want to call it, as he's going into this fight with Darren Till, right? Now, Darren Till, on the other hand, now this is where the drama in the fight definitely comes in. Darren Till is somebody right now who is dealing with the first two losses of his career, and they've both come back to back in devastating manner. The first fight against Tyron Woodley is just hard to watch because he's getting pummeled on the ground. He has no answer. He didn't throw a single strike in that round, the round he was finished. The second fight against Jorge Masvidal is in London, and he gets knocked down from his own people. This is really the story of Darren Till, and whether he can deal with such adversity, which is because he was undefeated before this as well. He was untouched before this. Maybe a draw, but he was always on the upward trend. How does he deal with this? His mindset seems to be the sort where he says, I don't care. Even if I lose 3 times in a row, I'm still going to go fight. It's a good mindset to have. But is he really come to terms with the fact that this has happened to him twice? I don't think it has. Even if it has, I don't think this is enough of a jump to make against somebody like KG, who has been on top of the middleweight division for so long, and he's comfortable there. So I think Kelvin Gastelum definitely takes his fight easily. Could go a decision, but I could be wrong. But I just don't think that if you're moving up a weight class when you're Darren Till, you shouldn't go after somebody like Kelvin Gastelum, who's been there in the division for so long, well established. My prediction, Kelvin Gastelum.
So we agree on that one.
Yeah, we agree on that one. But do you really think that Darren Till's ready to not only move up a weight class, but also challenge somebody like Kelvin Gastelum?
I don't think it's a question about him being ready to move up at this point, because weight cuts have been getting increasingly hard. And so it's like a debatable thing whether or not going up a weight class or going down a weight class affects performance. But with Darren Till, it's really clear. He gets drained, man. Have you seen those videos of him just practically just dying slowly while he's dehydrated, while he hasn't had food? And that takes a toll on you before a fight. Even though you get a day after the weigh-in more or less to recover, that doesn't really fix things. So I feel like Darren Till, for his own capabilities as an athlete, does need to move up a weight class. And I think he's ready for this challenge because he was undefeated before this, like you said, and coming off 2 losses at welterweight, that just shows that welterweight wasn't a fit for him. Middleweight could be, so I don't think he has to start new and start out with a lower contender. I think Kelvin Gastelum is the perfect matchup for him.
But you're picking him to lose.
Yeah.
So shouldn't he get a easier fight than perhaps Kelvin Gastelum straight out
So like
the bat?
matchmaking and then predicting.
Or do you think he's just done?
No, of course he's not done. So matchmaking and then predicting fights, I feel like, are 2 very separate things. So I could think that a fight needs to be booked but I could pick a completely different person to win based on their matchup against one another.
Yeah, that's fair. That makes sense. Yeah, I agree. But at the same time, I do think that Darren Till could surprise us because honestly,
Obviously.
I'm not sure how much the weight cut was a contributing factor in his losses. I mean, he looked okay at the weight. We knew he was cutting a lot, but ultimately, I think it really does come down to the weight. And I think if he feels fine, if all of that is true, I still think there's a chance he beats him. Obviously, it's very bold to make a prediction in a sport like mixed martial arts, where anything can happen anytime. Yeah. Anybody can show up on any day. And Kelvin said this himself on one of the embedded episodes. That is, I've had really bad training camps and I've won fights. And I've had really good training camps and I've lost fights. So it's very unpredictable, the sport. I think Darren Till, if he wins, it'll be by maintaining the distance, using his ones and twos to kind of hurt him, and then really using the elbows and his other Muay Thai techniques to finish him if he wins. But I just think Gastelum's boxing is superior. I think he's going to be able to be there when he needs to be. And I think he's also going to incorporate some wrestling. So altogether, yeah, I guess Kelvin Gastelum does take that one. Well, let's see. We could be wrong. This is really risky stuff, by the way. We're really putting ourselves on the line. But I think this is what we need to do.
Yeah, it's part of the job,
Screw it. Yeah, every single card we're going to make predictions. And the next fight, of course, Stephen Thompson versus Vicente Luque. All right.
How do you see this going?
Vicente Luque is an absolute beast, right? Let's just establish that right off the bat. Last three fights, Vicente Luque is Brian Barberena, Derek Krantz, Mike Perry, right? The Brian Barberena fight, I think this was in the Israel Adesanya Anderson Silva card. Dude, that fight was insane. Like, those guys...
Isn't he fighting for, the second time in 2 months?
Yeah, he just fought Mike Perry a few cards ago, and he fought, I think, Brian Barberena at the start of the year. Brian Barberena basically was like the welterweight, bulked up Diaz brother that we never knew of. Doesn't look like him or anything, but fights like them, right? Hands down, overextends a little bit, but he has that shoulder control going, or whatever that's called.
Shoulder roll.
There we go. Shoulder control, shoulder roll going and whatnot. But anyway, it was a good fight stylistically because it looked like that. But Luque absorbed a lot of punishment throughout the fight. And what I noticed from that fight was he's really durable. He took heavy shots, gave heavy shots. Both these guys were durable. Luque came out the winner. Then Derek Krantz, he knocked him out. Mike Perry went 3 rounds. Ultimately, what I'm trying to say is Luque is very good. The Silent Assassin is very underrated. I think this is going to be an amazing fight. Yeah. And he's extremely durable, and he's a high-quality MMA fighter. He's very good in all aspects of the game. Even the ground, even a strike.
There's a reason they call him the Silent Assassin. He's just so calm in the pocket. I mean, the other person could be... like Mike Perry, he was raining down on him and he would just take that one clean left hook. And it's pretty incredible to see someone like Vicente Luque, because he's someone that a lot of casuals don't know about. Yeah. But if you look at his fight style and everything, he's so complete, so well-rounded, because he uses his footwork in a way where he kind of backs you up against the fence. And he uses his footwork and keeps throwing in these just strikes to keep you going and to just keep you pushed back, and then just keeps applying pressure. But one hole that I've kind of noticed in his game is that he leaves himself open to strikes. So most fighters would kind of move around and they would move their head to avoid strikes, but he will just block them straight up. He's not one to shy away from taking hits. And
he squares up a little bit.
Yeah, he squares up a bit. Yeah. And then he starts taking hit. Of course, he can take them on the forearm, and that's going to lessen the hit, but it's still damage. I feel like there's still a massive... There's still a massive hole in the way that he conducts himself in the octagon. And I feel like someone like Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, he is a master of getting out of any sort of situation where he's backed up. Yeah. Because against Woodley, that was Woodley's game plan as well, back him up against the cage. And, even against Darren Till, that's what Darren Till kept trying to do, which was get him against the cage, and then when he has nowhere to go. But Stephen Wonderboy Thompson gets out of those situations. Yeah. I feel like this is going to be that moment for Luque where he's going to learn to avoid strikes and to get out of distance, because a forearm cannot stop Stephen Thompson. Yeah. If he catches you clean, if you try to stay close to him, if you don't get that distance, I feel like that's why Thompson's going to take this. I feel like not in the first round, maybe in the second round or the third round. Third round KO, Wonderboy.
Right. So Vicente Luque, obviously we've talked about. Stephen Thompson is coming off 2 losses to Darren Till in Liverpool And then Anthony Pettis, when Pettis shook up the world and just not. I mean, what a difference 2 fights makes, right?
Yeah.
Darren Till was the perennial, guy who's gonna fight Tyron Woodley forever because they had 2 fights. The first one was close, and the second one was also.
You mean
close.
Wonder Boy?
Yeah, Wonder Boy. Sorry, Wonder Boy is coming off 2 losses. Before that, he was the guy who was constantly fighting Tyron Woodley, and it looked as if he would have to fight him a third time if he beats Till. But then he loses to Till, then he loses to Pettis, and now he's so far down the rankings. It's definitely, in my opinion, make or break for him for that reason. He's coming off those 2 losses, but I still think Thompson's going to be good enough because I think there's a difference between fighting Brian Barberina, Derek Krantz, and then Mike Perry, and then jumping all the way to Stephen Thompson, who's been at the top of the division. This guy's beat Rory McDonald, right? This guy's beat Johnny Hendricks when Johnny Hendricks was still, alive. And,
before Paulo Costa.
Yeah, before Paulo Costa and before a few other fights, I think, as well, pretty early on. But ultimately, Stephen Thompson, I think, is good enough for this task, and I think he's going to win a decision because I think it's just going to be too evasive, and Luke is not going to be creative enough. At least I think that's what's going to happen in this fight. So I pick Stephen Thompson. Right. This next fight is very interesting for me, and I'm surprised it's the headliner for
The undercard?
Yeah, the undercard. But you know what? It's I mean, Dana White once explained this, that the fighters who are headlining the undercard are very important because they're promoting the undercard separately from the main card. So those guys are the feature attraction that then get a lot of marketing and a lot of money and basically PR and getting the word across goes into these fighters respectively. So sometimes when people say, yo, why was Frankie Edgar headlining the undercard at whatever event? Then you say it's because, that doesn't happen anymore, but it used to happen. This fight, Corey Anderson versus Johnny Walker, is so crucial for the UFC light heavyweight division for a lot of reasons, right? Johnny Walker's average UFC fight time is 56 seconds. That means this guy does not let a fight go more than a minute in 3 out of his 3 fights, all 3 KOs, right?
Misha Serkinov, 38 seconds.
Let me just run that down for real quick, right? Johnny Walker beat Khalil Roundtree Jr. in 1:57. Justin Ledet in 15 seconds via spinning back fist. Misha Serkinov with a 48-second flying knee at UFC 235, which was headlined by Jones and Anthony Smith. This guy's got a rocket ship up his ass, so to speak, and he's all the way going to the top to get a fight against John Jones. Everybody's calling for a fight against John Jones now because everybody in the light heavyweight division realizes there's no direct or straight contender, you know what I mean? So these guys essentially both are vying for a title shot.
Do you think they get it if either of them win?
That's a very good question. Now we have Dominic Reyes in the mix as well.
Yeah.
We have talks of John Jones saying he would go fight Stipe at heavyweight. I think that's more of just, him trying to rub it in DC's face.
Just getting back in the gossip grind.
Yeah. That's true. Maybe he's just doing that to keep himself relevant. Yeah. Then there's whole Israel Adesanya bullshit going on. But Dominic Reyes is a good contender. I think Johnny Walker, with 1 win over Corey Anderson, should not get a title shot immediately because I think there's still guys like Anthony Smith and Thiago Santos and like a few other the new batch of middleweight high rankers that he could perhaps go through, not because he might not deserve it, but he might just not be ready for it. So I think 3 wins and a win over Corey Anderson is good, but I don't know if it's they should push him to go ahead and fight John Jones. I think Dominic Reyes is perhaps a better option than that. Corey Anderson, however, and I'll let you talk just in a second. I'm really sorry. Corey Anderson's beat Pat Cummins, Glover Teixeira, Lear Latifi, all by unanimous decision, right? And the perception right now is that Corey Anderson's trying to forcefully insert himself into the title picture with John Jones because he goes to these press events and he starts picking fights. The reality, however, my friend, in my opinion, is that he's been competing at a very high level for a long time, right? His 4 losses, the only 4 losses on his record are against very good guys like OSP, Manua, Shogun Hua, and Gian Vellante, right? Not very good guys, but these guys are good and they've been on top of the heap for a very long time. Are either of these guys ready for John Jones?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. Yeah. What do you think about this fight?
Well, I don't know, man. I feel like in terms of how these 2 fighters line up against one another, Corey Anderson, like every card has to have one wrestling match.
Yeah.
There will be one fight that is based off of one person trying to get the other person to the ground, maybe keeping them there and then winning the fight from a decision. I just feel like this is going to be that fight. So I have Corey Anderson winning by decision.
I think Johnny Walker is going to be way too creative, especially exploiting the entries Corey Anderson's going to want to do, right?
Yeah.
And I think Johnny Walker just generally is very creative. He has those bursts, and he's just so much fun to watch. He's also seems like such a cool dude, but that's beside the point.
I want to be friends with him.
I want to be friends with him.
He has such a cool name.
Walker. Johnny Walker is a nice name. Wait, isn't that used for something? What is that used for? The chips, right? Walkers. No, alcohol.
Yeah.
Thank you, Murphy. Anyway, so are either of you guys ready for John Jones? No, but between the two, I think Johnny Walker is definitely gonna, and I think Johnny Walker one more win after this, and he should get John Jones. Not yet, but I love that fight, and I think it's gonna be a lot of fun. Corey Anderson's no slouch. Don't sleep on Corey Anderson, but I still think Johnny Walker gets the win. How? I don't know. Why? Because Johnny Walker.
56 seconds average fight time, right? That was the stat. So that's pretty crazy if you present it as something that, wow, he can finish someone in a minute on average.
Or less.
But at the same time, yeah, exactly. But then at the same time, doesn't it also tell you that this person's never gone the distance or even been close to having their gas tank tested?
Yeah. And
he's a big dude.
And Corey Anderson, his last 3 fights, all unanimous decisions. He knows what it's like to go 15 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah.
I don't know. We're going to disagree on this one?
I think we're going to disagree on this. That's fine. You can still be my friend. Derek Lewis, Blagoy Ivanov. I love this fight. Blagoy is 2-1 in his last 3. He's lost to Junior Dos Santos. He bounced back with 2 wins over Ben Rothwell and Tai Tuivasa, but he's 32 years old. Derek Lewis, his balls are still hot. That was amazing.
His back is still his back.
Yeah, that was after one of his. I had to take a number 2.
It was against. I think it was against Ngannou. Yeah. In the post of my back.
It hurt a lot. My back. I love Derek Lewis. I think Derek Lewis gets this win. He's pretty, so far at least, on an upward trend. Of course, he fought Daniel Cormier. What do you think is going to happen, right? But what I think is important in this fight is that Derek Lewis shows us that he's working on his conditioning, that he's taking this seriously for a very long time. Derek Lewis does not give a shit about what he looks like, how big he is going into a fight, yada, yada, yada. And now what I need to see from him is improvements in terms of his cardiovascular, in terms of how much he's weighing, how healthy he looks. But I still think, regardless of what it is on the day Derek Lewis gets to win against Blagoy Ivanov, it's going to be a pretty straightforward fight. I think Derek Lewis is going to knock him out at some point. What do you think?
Well, I'd agree. I feel like Derek Lewis is kind of so people start doubting him again. I don't understand why this trend began again, but I feel like Derek Lewis is going to take him either in the first round or the second round.
Man, this is a very good card. I cannot possibly, and we didn't even get a chance to discuss Kevin Lee versus Gillespie. Yeah, my God, that is such a good fight as well, dude. All of these fights are fights made in MMA heaven, because all of these fights are either very important in terms of the rankings, very important in terms of where the trajectory of the divisions are going, or just really good in terms of, the fact that these are guys who are coming out, all of them to fight, put on a show, and steal the show. This card is the best card of the year on paper. Now what can
Please
we
make
do?
weight.
Now we all need to pray. Omar, put your hand. Yeah, thank you. Listen, man, I've gone through way too much in my life with this.
3 Khabib versus Tony Ferguson matchups.
So much has been cancelled. Just the start of this week was Nate
Diaz. Get scared with Nate Diaz? God, man.
Put your fingers back up. What do you... Listen, man.
That was so,
no.
That was so freaky, man. And I just found out the way that the way that it was set up, the way that it was meant to happen. Nate Diaz Instagram just posted, I don't know what's happening.
I'm not going to New York.
They asked me to be silent.
I'm not going to know until they sort this out. That's more Nick. Actually, no, we're not doing any impressions. Please, just make weight, show up. That's
don't trip
all.
on a wire.
Nobody.
Don't sneeze your back out.
Nobody.
All of that stuff.
Every single person, if they make weight, if this is on, promises to be the best card in history on paper. But here's the thing. These cards can go the other way. I don't want to jinx it. We're excited. We hope you're excited. Everybody watch UFC 244. Tell us in the comments what you thought about the card when it happens. Come back and watch this video again after the fact and see if we got them right or wrong. and make fun of us or don't.
We'll be making fun of each other.
Yeah, for sure.
In the
That's going to
next
happen.
episode.
But hey, this is mixed martial arts. This is the beautiful sport. We are fans of it. We're all very happy for it. This is going to be the most exciting weekend as an MMA fan. We hope you're watching. We hope you're staying tuned. Until after UFC 244, sayonara. That's not my outro.
Yeah. You could have just gone with the standard.
Thank you. Goodbye.
It's like,
Oh, we're running out of storage. Oh my god, that's my outro. Boom, and start playing the lo-fi music now.
I'm never gonna listen to you.
You're never gonna listen to me.
why? How did it survive?
Oh, it's all right. It's all right. Yeah.
Alright, okay.
Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Yeah.
Dun, 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 dun.